My name is Keith, and from the time I was about 4 years old, I was interested in being a part of the entertainment business. And I've done many things throughout that time, from singing in bands, writing music, hosting television shows, everything involved in the professional wrestling business. And I've written comic books, done a lot of things, and almost all of those things failed in some way or another. But I still kept going. I still wanted to continue to create. And there's just something in me that drives me to create. And I started thinking, well, what is it that drives anyone to create? And that's going to be the point of this podcast. We're going to talk to people from all aspects of the entertainment industry. We're going to find out what made them interested in creating art, and why, when faced with success, when faced with failure, the ups and downs of life and life in the entertainment business, they continue to create. So, and hopefully we'll have some good and interesting conversations along the way that you'll be interested in hearing. So tune in to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. Our guest this week is an artist, an author, a musician, a public speaker, like many of our guests, a man who wears many hats, journalist, Mr. Sean Parker. Thank you so much for coming, Sean. I appreciate it.
Hi there, Keith. Very happy to be here. Thanks a lot for that intro.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. So let's just get started out with when did you realize that you wanted to begin creating art and entertainment and things of that nature?
I don't know if I ever decided on it. I think I just understood at high school, that I was a creative at about sort of 14, when I discovered the work of like The Cure and Prince and Public Enemy and acts like this, things that were deeper into the pop culture. And I realized they were doing something visually and musically that I was very attracted to, that I saw as quite serious. And it's connected to pop art. So then I went into music and sort of joined bands and did the grunge thing. And then went to art school and started to expand it to painting. And these things all started to touch on each other. And I'm also a writer all the way through that. So just started to flesh it out. But started at about 14, I suppose, to answer it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm wearing my Prince and the Revolution shirt today. So
there we go. Automatic connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So you began sort of playing like grunge and rock music. This morning I was listening to the album that you put out earlier this year, and that's more of a collage, like a sound collage, electronic type piece of work. So how did you get from rock music and grunge and that sort of thing into the electronic music? How did that transition occur?
That's quite a journey, isn't it? Yeah, and
yeah, it is.
Well, back then, 1990, with the Nirvana hit here, just like they hit there, like a ton of bricks. And the band I was in, Sweet Assassin, we were called, which is school friends, were basically copying Nirvana and the Manic Street Preachers from here, doing that grunge thing and loving it, fab.
Yeah.
But then we went on with our lives, and I joined a funk rock band in Exeter. And then and then I went to art school, where I didn't do music, I just did art. Then afterwards I went to live in Istanbul for 10 years. And I got quite serious about the music and did the 3 albums and became a bit of a artist in my own right, became the biggest international act in Turkey, really, during that process. And out there, we were very art rock, for want of a better term. It was Talking Heads, Flaming Lips, everything were coming out in Britain, and all that brainy sort of deeper level of rock, and that is very much where I've stayed. That's what I always was, and when I came home 10 years ago, did a few more singles and things like that, and kept it going, but discovered the way you can make music over the internet and the collaboration with others in other countries with the file sharing and things like that, and then sampling. I've always been interested in sampling since Public Enemy and My Life in the Bush of Ghosts with Brian Eno and David Byrne. Amazing record from '80, which is still there. And I suppose that was a template for this Caucasian Nights, which I did this year. So there's lots of sampling, lots of beats, because I love my rhythms, and I've never really explored it until this record. So it's basically hip hop rhythms with my poetry, with some crazy sampling in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so I hope that's a kind of a timeline of what happens. It's not pop, really.
Sure.
It's not pop. I do try, but it's not.
Yeah, it's a very interesting record. I was really getting into it this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and the first two Manic Street Preachers albums were kind of seminal for me, because I was really into hard rock, like long hair, pop metal sort of. And then I heard those two albums, and it really kind of Generation Terrorists sort of bridged a gap between hard rock and punk. And then the second album, I can't think of what it's called right off my head, but
Good Gold Against the Soul.
That one, yes, thank you. Was a lot hookier than the first album. It had a lot more pop going, and it just kind of, to me at that age, in my early 20s, it kind of helped me explore other music. That and Violator by Depeche Mode, because that album was so undeniable. Like, it didn't really matter to me what kind of music you liked. Like, that Violator was just so beautiful. Like, so yeah. So you said that in between kind of your music, you started working on art at school, and I also, so I'm wondering what were some of your influences as an artist? It seems, I don't know, I'm no art critic. I love looking at beautiful things, but it seems like I pick up maybe a little bit of Van Gogh, sort of abstract stuff in your paintings. Is that fair?
It's fair. The good thing about art is that everything's fair.
Yeah.
I started to sketch things in school at the same time as the creative. I think I did for Prince again on the cover of the Love Sexy album, where he's, it's a very striking picture of him, and I did that, and I started to do that kind of portraiture. Really loved it, but not seriously. And then about 10 years later, I went to art school here. Like, that was my degree, and I went to the University of the Creative Arts in Farnham here, and so that taught me that you can take art seriously. So I went there for 6 years, and I did my BA and my masters. And this picture behind me, if anybody's actually watching, is what the one of mine. So it's like, this is the place I've come to now. Back then, it wasn't quite so formalized. And I never took it. It's difficult to take art seriously when you're a work-minded person, because you're like, well, what you can pay? But then you realize that you're really communicating something different, but by this thing. And the reason that I chose to do the fine art degree was because it was so broad-based. I went actually to art college to do the film and video. I wanted to be a director. Quite after my dad died at 97, I had a big sort of, right, what am I going to do with my life that I want to do? It was to be a director. But it changed quickly because I realized that wasn't quite for me, but painting apparently was. And I just loved, I could get in the zone for days and weeks and do these paintings and series of paintings. And I took some time out back in Istanbul. I tend to have these chunks of doing things. And I just did the music. And now when I came back, I got right back into the art again. Patrick Heron is a big artist here. To Picasso is a timeless reference for everybody. And some more obscure one, like Kandinsky, I adore. He used to paint music, and that's always inspiring. As a person who tries to connect art and music, as I am, he used to paint the music as he heard it or as he remembered it, and he did these incredible abstracts off the back of that. So Kandinsky, Heron, Picasso, and Hans Hofmann, who's an amazing American abstract expressionist who people don't know very much about for the 50s. I discovered him when I was young, and he still sticks in my head now. Big slabs of color as canvases, and it's almost like the canvas becomes a sculpture. I love that guy. Hardly anyone knows him, which is a good reference to drop here,
Yeah, for sure. Send people looking for things.
Yeah,
I can definitely see Picasso in the colors and the shapes. as well. Just even looking at that behind you, like, yeah, it's awesome, man.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So, speaking of directing, you did I saw a brief mention of this in one article, so I'm not sure what exactly your role was, but you had some involvement in a play of some kind, right?
Well, yeah, I've been sort of touched on plays throughout my life because my dad was the drama lecturer at Exeter University, so he used to put us on the stage as children, doing little support roles and things. At art school, I was in a couple of the short films of other art students because I was a couple of years older as a mature student, but it's nothing that because I consider acting to be a serious art, which I'm not trained in. That's how I see
Right.
acting. It's not but a thing to be a celebrity. It's a serious, and I don't have those props. You got certain things that you need to do. That's how I like to see acting. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of pretentious idiots, and I'm sure it's not that. Kevin
Right.
Spacey. So it's like, but a couple of years ago, I got into script writing. So I think what you're referring to is it's the Wolfstadt Wire is
Mm.
a script that I wrote during COVID time when we were locked up, and the Wolfstadt Wire it's a prisoner talking to a younger prisoner whilst the younger prisoner's having an affair with the older prisoner's assistant nurse type person. It's that kind of a menage a trois arrangement, and I was very proud of it. It was my first proper attempt at a play, and it won a Kostler Award Platinum, which is a nice thing. So that's the closest success I've had with the theatre world, really.
That's really cool, though. And so other writing that you've done, I'm really intrigued by the journalistic stuff. I saw that you did an interview. You've interviewed Ed Harcourt. He is an amazing artist, and I'm just curious what it's like to sit down with other creative people on your end and ask the questions and try to form something that that is unbiased, but at the same time gives an insight into the person, like the character behind the music. Like, what is that like to do and to deconstruct? And
Yeah, between 2010 and 18, I was doing interviews with music, and so Ed Harcourt, kind of half of them were email, and the other half were in person. So the Ed one was email, for example. But I supported his band in Istanbul. He came out to do a show there, and I got on stage with him, and we went around town all that day. So we had that kind of a relationship, and then afterwards we did a little interview for God Is in the TV. So I was able to ask a few questions, but that was 2010 now, so I can't really remember the in-depth amounts of it. But if I go to Julie Burchill, who's a writer still going, who I adore, and I did an interview with her about a year later than that, and she just came out with the most fantastic quotes as she does about how she felt about the situation of world politics, because I knew I was able to go there with her and she would answer straight back. So that was a really good one from her time. And then the best sit down one was in Istanbul again with Sarah Blackwood, who's the singer of Dubstar, who were a big 90s band here. That's a lovely lady, and she was on tour in Istanbul. So I supported her again, actually, with my band. And we sat on the top of a Sultan Ahmet hotel and shot the breeze for half an hour. She told me all about her mental health journeys and the situation of the music industry going into Spotify world, as we were in about 2012, 13. We're all sort of going, as was she. She's a multi-million selling artist going into 2010, when everything, as we all know, went like that in the music industry, which has now recovered, and it's completely unrecognizable, but it's recovered. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that we riffed on.
yeah, I was going to say, I feel like physical media is slowly coming back. Like, I think even people who, records, vinyl has made a pretty big comeback in the last few years. It's to the point where vinyl is pretty much the most expensive kind of media you can buy as far as to listen to. I don't know if it's ever going to be the way that it was, where people actually sit down and listen to full albums anymore. Um, but I guess that's just the world that we live in now, and you kind of have to adjust to it. But I still buy CDs and records, and I don't think I'll ever stop. It's just what I like. So,
Good for you.
yeah. And so you've written some novels as well. Um, and,
Yeah.
yeah, just talk about that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not actually. I'm actually working on a novel at the moment, as in a narrative sort of
Gotcha.
story novel. The books I've done so far, including Delicate Balance of Reason, which is the last one, sitting there next to me, they're usually cultural theory, cultural studies of things that are going on in culture as the writer, because that's what I did at the end of my degree. Was the actual master's was in cultural theory, perspectives of intimacy in contemporary culture. And when I got back from Istanbul, I wanted to record to not lose it. I sort of put it into a book called Salt in the Milk, 10 Years in Istanbul. And so it's not like necessarily just talking about Istanbul, it's about the culture of the place at the time, as opposed to the 2,000 years of brilliant history. There's enough books like that. This was about what's happening at the moment there, and the tensions they have between the Ottoman past and the secular present, Islamifying present, that kind of thing, and also and the music scene, which I was deeply involved with. So I tried to connect the contemporary music scene there, being an expat, with the complicated experience of being a Turk into arts there, as my friends were. So that's where that book came from. It's not a history of Istanbul, you know. And then each year afterwards, I've kind of collected my thoughts each year. What am I writing about now? What am I doing? And put them into a book. And that's what I seem to have done, because I'm on the 9th since then. So
Well, there you go. And so the novel that you're working on right now, is that going to be fiction or nonfiction?
It's fiction. So yeah, I'm. It's a which is a massive, it's scary departure. The
Sure.
play I was talking about earlier was fiction, of course. So I've got an idea of where to go. But the craft of writing a novel, like acting, I see as very serious and very. There's a lot of gravity. There's no point in putting something out there if it's not the best thing you can do, I guess is what I mean. So I really want to make sure that it's completely right. When it comes to doing a song, you can put or a painting, you can put something out there that's completely crazy and go, someone might like it, you know. But
Right.
with something like a book, it's such a massive commitment that I personally want to make sure. So basically, I'm a bit nervous about it, but it'll
Sure.
probably come out next year, knowing me, because I'm always busy with something, you know.
Yeah, I feel like with art, as far as the physical medium, like painting or photographs and things like that, and music as well, like you're touching on emotions, um, and you can kind of, emotions can be erratic and be crazy and be everywhere, and they're going to connect with someone, or they can be really calm and still connect with someone. With a book or with acting, there's sort of a method to it. It's a lot more, because I've tried writing books. It's not for me, but it's just hard. But I've acted some, and I've also made music, and it's definitely, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more cerebral for me. Acting is than making music. Music comes from my gut and my heart, and and acting, I have to put myself in a place to do it. You know, it's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely.
Awesome. So what's the transition like going from nonfiction to fiction?
Uh, well, with the fiction, with the non-fiction, you have to gather up everything that you know, string it together, package it, conceptualize it, use your brain, your sort of left brain, if I may, to actually construct the cake and to make sure that it tastes good for the person reading it. You know, that's the obligation of the journalist and cultural theorist, you know everything that's going on. You know what you want to communicate, but it needs to come out well for the person who's to not sort of switch off after two paragraphs. You know, you want them to get sort of to the end as much as they possibly can. With the fiction, it's much more of a putting yourself into the space of the painting, into the right brain of being in a dream world, really. But your fingers are working as you're typing, and they're sort of trying to keep up with the speed of your brain and you're the scenario, because you've gone into a scene, haven't you? And that scene, and you don't necessarily want to live there, but for this period, you want to get everything that you can out of it, see where it takes you, and then have the discipline to say, and that's enough, you know. So yeah, opening up that part of your brain to a bunch of invented characters, or invented with hints of the real world, which is something lots of writers are doing now. You can almost tell who's being written about, you know. But that's quite an exciting thing to do, and it's a bit of a challenge because it feels like such a luxury to just write fiction, you know, or to paint. Is such a luxurious feeling thing, and I've still got the social, not socialist, but the work ethos of doing things, and they need to have a purpose. I've always had a conflict about that in my head, of having to have it do something. You know, it doesn't have to do something, but I can't sort of help it. So I'm still working on that.
Yeah, that's interesting with art, because a lot of times you're creating art just for the sake of creating art, and you're not even sure where it's going to go once you put it out there in the world. It's kind of up to the world to take it somewhere. So
that's it. That's it. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff out there now, isn't there? So we're all aware of that. You know?
There is.
It's a good thing, but you need to have that edge. And
yeah, for sure. So now, as far as your public speaking, I know that you do inspirational and motivational speaking, and I think it's probably pretty obvious to people who are watching or listening to this that you have a bit of a stammer, and that's kind of what you focus on when you're talking. Is that correct with your public speaking?
That's essentially it. About 10 years ago, I did a TED talk in Istanbul, stammering and creativity. The stammer's sort of in a place that I'm comfortable with it now. You know, I can communicate and it's all right. But it's been there since I was 5, so I've had a big sort of journey with it, and I know all about it. So I was asked to do the TED talk in 2013, and I was thinking, what should I do it about? Because the organizer asked me, understanding I was a writer, and I just thought, what are the things that I know about that I can do for 15 minutes that will last for a long time, so it's not like just a pop moment. And stammering and creativity are things I do know. So I was able to talk about the left and the right brain speech production and the conflict in there, which can happen in a stammerer, and the pre-thought that we go through, and all that sort of thing. And that then I sort of published last year a companion piece to that, which was Compelling Speech. That was my last book. So I'm very, very proud of that book. It's been the biggest seller, and it was sort of the book version of that talk. And that TED talk that I did there, I came back to Britain and then did a couple more of those talks at universities and things here. Haven't done one for a couple of years. I think probably done for me now. But that was the main public speaking talking I was doing then.
I think I'm going to, like I said this morning, I checked out some of your music. I think I'm going to have to look deeper into your work. Like, I obviously haven't had time to read a book since we set this interview up. But
no.
But I'm going to. I think you're a pretty interesting man. I'll just say that. You piqued my interest for sure. So, is there anything that you wanted to talk about as far as where people can find you and things that you've got coming up and that sort of thing?
Well, we've done a really good little tour of the stuff that I've been up to, which has been great. Just about a month ago, I published A Delicate Balance of Reason on audiobook with me reading it. So I've the world of audiobooks, as your audience will be aware, is a booming one. So I'm hoping to do all those sort of 10 books in time on it. But we've done the last two, Compelling Speech and this one, they're on Audible. So if they want to go and pick one up, if they don't have time, everybody it's a different commitment, isn't it? Audiobook, nothing wrong with it at all. And if the person doesn't like text or doesn't have time, or just likes the intimacy of me reading my book into their ear, then that's out now. So that would be nice. And the Caucasian Nights that we were talking about, this new album of mine, thank you for referencing it, because not a lot of people have talked about it. It's just not very, very high profile, but I'm very proud of it. And it's, it's quite difficult when you do lots of different sort of things, as I do, to put enough attention onto each of them. And the books have had a lot more sort of promotion and or Audible behind them and that kind of thing. But the albums are a different sort of story. You really have to do it yourself and go, look, listen to this, DJ, that kind of thing. So there's a different, what it's all about. There's a different kind of promotion angle to everything now. And it's all about X, as far as I can tell, and LinkedIn and that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. It's tough because it does seem like social media is kind of declining now. And so it's harder to promote things. Like I remember when social media first started kind of opening up, I was so excited because I was like, I can get my stuff out there and everyone will see it, and there's a potential to reach all these people. And now you hear like people are leaving X and people are leaving Facebook and people are unhappy with Threads, which is the new Instagram version of Twitter. And it's just like, and I know there's Instagram creators actually, like the influencers who have been complaining about how fast their viewer counts have been dropping off, and it's just I wonder what the next thing is going to be. Because it's got to be something. Like there has to be a way to get things out to people, but it seems like social media is sort of slowly fading at this point. So I'm curious.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's still, with the newspapers going down as they are, and X replacing the newspapers in Britain is the biggest. I sort of just read this morning that it's the most trusted and the biggest source of news in England right now. And
wow.
Obviously the Facebook is 2 billion around the world for years, and it's like there's something so disposable about the whole thing that it makes a proper creative sort of wretch. But at the same time, it's also it's a message maker to get your point to somebody who might get it, and the algorithm is sort of, I guess we have to confess, good for that to create an art rock sort of lover in England to an art rock lover in Canada, So
right.
Going, and by that it's hard to complain too much. But I do miss permanence, and I do buy book. I got loads of books over there. I don't enjoy to read. I'm very happy for people to read my ebooks, which exist. But personally, I need to buy the original thing if I'm going to do a review or if I'm going to just sit back and read. I just like the original thing. Very much with albums too. Though I do confess I've got now completely used to Spotify and YouTube. So, but my heart is completely with people like you and people supporting it in a physical way. That's great. I'm just a bit I don't know. I guess I've been sold to, but it's great that you can hear things in lots of different ways. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I listen to Spotify every day. Like I can't say that I don't, but at the same time, I have a CD collection that has 5,000 CDs, and I probably have 120 albums. So it's yeah. And I'm never gonna stop collecting physical media, because even when honestly, the more that it gets phased out, the more is available to me because people are selling their collections. So I can, I can pick stuff up. So
it's interesting too, isn't it? How if you have an original copy of even a tape cassette from like 1982 or something for the Human League, for example, and in another 10, 20 years, someone's going to be so excited over that object, which back in our day would be like, this piece of crap, really? But now that's fascinating, isn't it? That and even if it's completely torn up and not usable, they're going to like the object. I really love that, because that's an artifact becoming an artifact in history and time, despite the fact you can't listen to it on it anymore. It's the thing itself. I think that's really cool, and I'm
Yeah,
surprised.
sure. Yeah. Do you remember the band 1927? They
1927. No.
they were a pretty popular AOR band in England. Actually, they didn't really break in America, but they had
Got to
a
write it
couple
down and listen
hits,
to it later.
couple hits in England. But their album Ish is what it's called. Dot 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 ish. I got that on cassette. Um, Sort of by accident, but I was like, it was kind of a happy surprise. And my son is 8. Well, 8 at the time, he's 9 now. And I played it for him, and he loved it. Like he thought, I don't know what it was, and he just wanted me to buy more tapes. He was like, "This sounds so good." Like he wanted me to get more cassettes because of that one 1927 cassette. But I think their biggest hit was a song called "Tell Me a Story." It's a really good song. But yeah, they were an AOR band in the early to mid '80s in England. That I believe they had some top 40 hits over there. I'm not completely positive because I'm not in England, but I know that in America they did absolutely nothing.
No.
So
Well,
yeah.
I also haven't heard of them. So,
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
gonna be having a listen this evening now. That's
Cool.
the
Cool.
great thing about this kind of thing is that I
Yeah,
get to hear a new band that I'd never heard of.
absolutely. Their singer has an amazing voice. I mean, if you like keyboards and guitar driven stuff with like a really smooth vocal, I mean that's pretty much what they do. So
Okay.
yeah. So one thing that we like to present to all of the guests, there's hurdles in life and setbacks and everything. What is it that keeps you through the good and the bad wanting to create? What is it that drives you to be a creative person and to make art and to expose yourself to the world in that way?
Great question. I suppose it's because the creativity itself is your core, and you don't know that necessarily until you go through bad experiences, or the COVID, for example, or all sorts of situations we find ourselves in. It can be any kind of, perhaps a big sort of breakup. These things reduce you to your original sort of who am I? And when you have that, and you realise that to write it out in a poem or a song or a painting, you feel better, and then you come back to that thing and go, wow, that thing is really raw and might not be perfectly stylistic or any of the things that you love in other people, but it's a really powerful piece in itself. And then you realize, wow, I can actually do that art, and it did work in that way, and the art is the expression of that. The creativity is absolutely core to the resilience that you reference. It is what it is. It is that thing. So it is for me anyway. I'm a bit of a super creative, as some of my friends call me. I realize that, but lots of people have this in them, and I always try and encourage it in them. And don't worry about how good it is; just do it. And that's usually people feel better, particularly with the writing out of their problem. Is a much better way than lots of other routes they could go down, I'd say.
Sure. Okay. So Sean, I want to thank you so much. This is I hope that my questions did you justice, because you are a very interesting man. You've done a lot of really cool stuff, and hopefully some
Thank you.
people will listen to this podcast and get directed towards you. And I know that they can find your books on Amazon and Audible. And I know you've got albums up on Spotify. I've seen a couple up there on Spotify this morning. So, yeah, I mean, I want to thank Tyler Martin and Emmy Studios. He's my producer. It looks like he slept in this morning, so he'll have some editing to do after we get this podcast recorded and sent over to him on the cloud. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm Keith, and we will talk to you guys again soon.